Pokemon fans, Tamashii here. Now that I've had a little time to get acquainted with some of the new Pokemon, I thought I'd share some of my opinions on them. Gen 6 has a ton of great new Pokemon I'd love to pay homage to, and what better way to do that than to rank them in a top 10 list. So who are the best of the new bunch in my eyes? Let's take a look. Number 10. Xerneas. What better way to kick off the list than to take a look at my favorite new legendary? Unlike previous legendaries, the Gen 6 Legends mythology isn't quite as hyped up throughout the game, but personally I think their inclusion still somewhat works in the story. Not perfectly, mind you, but well enough to make me like both new legends. Of the two though, I have to say I prefer Xerneas, the Pokemon of life. People have always sort of made fun of me for this, but I've always really enjoyed the more positive characters and stories in the media I consume. I'm not a huge fan of dark or edgy things. When there's so much negativity in the real world, it seems like fantasy is the only place where something so pure and good can exist. With Xerneas being the Pokemon of life and the more positive of the duo, it's only natural that it's my favorite of the two. Not only do I like its concept, but I prefer its design. It's really majestic and colorful, and I love that not only is there an X in its body shape, but there are also X's right in its eyes. Qmari has stated that he actually had artist block when he was tasked with designing the legendaries, so he and Yusuke Omura worked together to come up with their designs. Personally, I think the end result was stunning. It really is fitting that in the most interactive and multiplayer Pokemon game to date, a collaboration was required to make the whole thing come together. Number 9. The Froakie line. Following my favorite new legendary is my favorite new starter. Sorry to disappoint you Chespin and Fennekin fans out there, but I'm definitely Team Froakie. Not only does it look so cute and comfy with all that bubbly fluff around its neck, once it evolves into Greninja, it can be a real threat. With its hidden ability Protein, it can change its type based around what kind of attack it's using, which means it gets stab on every move it can learn. It also has a diverse enough move pool and high enough stats in both attack and special attack that it can be used in a lot of different and interesting ways. I'm always a fan of Pokemon that inspire creativity in their trainers, so even though all three of the starters ended up having something awesome to bring to the table, my favorite is the Froakie line. Number 8. Klefki. While X and Y did a lot of great things to try and recapture the magic of the older games for returning fans, it did sort of come across as a little pandery. It feels like Klefki was Game Freak's way of saying, you can't have everything you want, this is still our game. And to me, that's endearing. You have to have some Pokeballs to make a Pokemon that, by design, you must know a huge chunk of your fanbase is going to loathe. And even though there's still some outcry over Klefki's design, I think more and more people are being won over by this cute little keyring every day. Because it's Steel Fairy, it resists both Poison and Dragon, not to mention the many other typings Steel resists alone. And with Prankster and the many useful utility moves it can learn, it's a pretty big threat on the battlefield. It can set up spikes, screens, recover HP with Drain Kiss, and take down threats with Foul Play. It just goes to show, you can't judge a keyring by its cover. Number 7. Pumpkaboo. This is an interesting one, because it's not only one of the very first Ghost Grass types, but it's also the first Pokemon to have more than one set of base stats. Just like hunting for the biggest pumpkin in a pumpkin patch, you have to look for the biggest Pumpkaboo you can find. And it's kinda cool how they recreated that fun little hunt just by giving it some stat variations. While its evolution Gourgeist is a little disappointing design-wise, it kinda reminds me of the mops from Fantasia. Pumpkaboo itself is super adorable, and it reminds me of my hometown too. Number 6. Noivern. Who would have thought that a regional bat could be so awesome? Noivern is not only the fastest dragon type ever, but it has two absolutely awesome abilities that give it some diverse roles to play. It can scout out the opponent with Frisk, or use Infiltrator to bypass substitutes and screens and take out defensive Pokemon. While Crobat and Swoobat have their own little charms, Noivern is definitely the coolest of the three. And in addition to how fun it is to battle with, its design is also pretty cool, and reminds me of the final boss from Harmonite. It could be an intentional reference or just a coincidence, but it's always fun to spot references to other Game Freak games. Number 5. Villon. I'll have to admit, I saw a lot of the leaks people were posting before the game came out. If you live under a rock and you didn't hear the news, not only did reviewers with early copies break their NDAs and post information about the games, but stores all over the world were breaking the street date and allowing people to buy copies of the games 2 weeks before it was supposed to come out. As such, a lot of info about these games were posted online, and unfortunately I was exposed to a lot of it, which I'll admit was partially by choice. Since this was the first time ever Game Freak had attempted a worldwide release, and we actually had the option of not having everything spoiled by Japan months in advance, I was pretty depressed that I hadn't been more careful to avoid this information, and that I had seen so much of the game beforehand. That was, until I found out Villon has different wing patterns, depending on where in the world the person who caught it purchased their 3DS system. And I saw so many people trying to figure out how many different patterns there were, and where they all came from. It gave me hope that there was still more to discover, and for the community to try and figure out together. And it was a pretty cool mechanic, that gave what could have been just another regional bug something unique and interesting. It's fun to try and collect all the different Vivillons from all over the world. Thanks to this Pokemon, I was still able to have fun discovering new things about the game even after so much was spoiled. So I'm glad Vivillon was able to help keep the magic alive. Number 4. Mega Aerodactyl. When I was playing through X, I decided I wanted to raise an Aerodactyl, since it's one of the very few Gen 1 Pokemon I've never had on my team before. I was so pleasantly surprised by my choice once I got its Mega Stone too. Mega Aerodactyl is a total beast. If I'm losing or doing badly, Mega Aerodactyl can turn it all around in an instant. It's so fast, I mean so fast. It outspeeds everything, and it hits really hard. It looks a teensy bit silly with that spike goatee, but it's so much fun to use I can look past that. Most of my favorite Pokemon tend to be on the lower end of the stat spectrum, so it was really refreshing to have an absolutely OP team member for once. Number 3. Heliolisk. In White 2, I decided to try a mystery egg run, where someone on Wi-Fi would give me 6 random eggs at the start of the game, and that would be my team. What I got ended up being a mono water team, with a Dream World Poliwag. Rain has been around for a while, but I hadn't really ever gotten to try using it in an extensive amount until then. With Drizzle, it was present in every battle, and I discovered I really liked Rain and the synergy my team had because of it. I initially wrote Heliolisk off as a Sand Team sort of Pokemon, or with Sandstorm and Sandveil. As it turns out, it can have dry skin as well, and really works better in the rain overall. With Thunder, and for some reason a rain-boosted Surf, I can't wait to bring my Politoed over from White 2 and try them out together. Number 2. Meowstic. Surprise, surprise, this generation's kitty made the list. But it is a slot lower than you probably expected, so at least my list wasn't that predictable. For the first time, the regional cat has a gender split, in that the male Meowstic has a more support-based move pool, and the female Meowstic has a more offensive move pool. This is cool for a number of reasons, but mostly I'm just glad they changed it up a bit. In the past, most male and female Pokemon duos saw the male with higher offensive stats, and the female is more defensive. Hell, even in Gen 2, for a Pokemon to be female, it had to have low offensive DBs. And since hyper offense is becoming more and more popular, this meant the female Pokemon in these duos were almost always less useful than their male counterparts. Here, both the male and female Meowstic had the exact same base stats, which means they're both equally as useful, but their move pools give them different roles to play, and for once the female Pokemon is the more offensive. It's just great to see the Pokemon gender roles being broken like this, and it's also nice to see a feline Pokemon that can really act as a sweeper. It's great to see a gender duo where both Pokemon are equally viable. This is truly Poke quality. Number 1. Mega Absol. While most of the choices on my list were picked mostly for how they played and how fun they were to use in battle, after all, with the game only being out for 3 weeks now, I haven't had an awful lot of time to form sentimental attachments. This pick is more for personal reasons. It wouldn't be a Tamashii top 10 list without some sort of story, would it? Anyway, as many of you know, I've struggled with an anxiety disorder my entire life, and my biggest phobia is natural disasters. Absol is a disaster Pokemon, so you might think that I dislike it for this reason, but actually I think it's just misunderstood. Absol's lore comes from the way animals are able to sense natural disasters, and Absol is said to show up when a disaster is about to strike to warn people. When I was trying to learn to cope better with my disorder, I found out that because animals are able to sense and respond to natural disasters before people can, having an animal around that is calm can help calm someone down that is struggling with anxiety. Absol really is the ultimate symbol of security in that way. If you had an Absol nearby acting calm, you would never need to be afraid. And if something was going to happen, it could respond quickly and protect you. When I was a kid, I used to read a lot of magical girl manga too. It always gave me hope that someone even as weak and fearful as me could become strong enough to protect the things and people they loved. My favorite magical girl was Sailor Moon, and I used to actually secretly wish she was real, so that I would know someone out there really was watching over the world and keeping it safe. Sailor Moon's final form, Eternal Sailor Moon, has these gorgeous white wings. And guess what Mega Absol got? Not only is Absol now a symbol of security and safety for me, it also reminds me of my childhood hero. While anxiety is still something I struggle with, I've been told that I can find that sense of security within myself too, and I hope that someday I might be able to get there. Until then though, I like to think that my Mega Absol is watching over me, as silly as that sounds. So there you have it, my top 10 favorite new Kalos Pokemon. What are some of your favorites of the 6th generation? Leave me a comment and let me know. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to click here to subscribe for more Pokemon videos. See ya!